Best interests. 1432 hours, 13th of February 2007. Who was the man your father was trying to contact? I don't know. Saheim's voice was smooth, almost bored. This wasn't the first time he'd been interrogated, nor would it be the last. He was sure of that. Saheim, that is difficult to believe. You were his firstborn, the one he wanted to pass his role to. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. He looked around. He'd been to this interrogation room before, when he'd first arrived at Guantanamo Bay. He hadn't returned there until today. Saheim, we both know you want to get home, see your family. We both know you want to live and be free again. It's in your best interests to cooperate. Saheim smirked lazily and glanced back at the man in front of him. Best interests. Typical Americans with their rules based on sentiment and love. He had risen above such weakness when he committed himself to a life and death for the glory of Allah. I've divorced this life. I don't care about my family, he droned, spacing his words as though he was talking to a child. A vein in the American's head bulged alarmingly. Saheim noticed how his eyes flickered towards the blackened window to his right. Leaning forward slowly, he asked, "Is there a problem, sir?" His voice dripping with contempt as he addressed the man. He watched in amusement as the man struggled to retain a hold on his composure. Saheim knew that regardless of how angry the American got, he could not touch him. He could not even shout at him. It would harm his human rights. He smirked again. Pathetic. Behind the blackened window, CIA Director Andrew Montgomery watched the proceedings with Major General Dunleavy, the man in charge of this mess. He had heard disbelievingly from Dunleavy about the lack of progress that his interrogation team had made, and now turned to him, one eyebrow raised. "Are they all like this?" he asked. Dunleavy sighed. "All of them, sir. The bastards talk in circles and make a mockery of everything we do. Since Abu Ghraib, we've had 3 years of smacking our heads against a brick wall. They know that we can't touch them, and they take pleasure in exploiting the fact." Montgomery turned back to the window. It appeared that this young man, Saheim Kassemi, had developed the same condescending arrogance that his father had had before him. Their man was close to breaking point. Montgomery made his move. "May I go in?" Dunleavy's eyes widened, but nodded at him to enter. Saheim blinked in surprise as the door opened to reveal a tall, well-built man with dark sunglasses and a buzz cut. This wasn't usual. His feeble interrogator hadn't yet called for assistance. "Afternoon, gentlemen. I have a few words to say to Mr. Kassemi here." He looked towards the blonde. "You got the memo, didn't you?" The blonde man paled. "Yes, sir," he stammered out, walking quickly out of the room. Saheim smirked behind his back and turned his attention back to the man before him. Strangely, the man didn't sit down. Instead, he walked around the table, stopping right behind him. "You are Saheim Kassemi, born on October the 10th, 1988, the son of Abasali Kassemi, 5th in command to Osama bin Laden, correct?" His voice was loud and unnervingly close, reminding him of the jihadist instructor he'd been sent to aged 9. Saheim swallowed before replying. "That is what your records say, isn't it? I expect a yes or no answer. Do you understand?" The man barked in his ear. Saheim started, clenching his jaw. The man turned and walked out, stopping only to instruct 2 guards to escort him out. Back behind the guards, Montgomery contemplated the young man as he was led out. "He is an interesting specimen, isn't he?" Dunleavy offered wryly. Montgomery pulled his sunglasses off and ran his hand over his cropped hair. "Indeed he is. He is obstinate and contemptuous of everyone you've sent in. He's also young and strong enough to withstand the old enhanced methods without side effect." He slid the glasses into his pocket and turned to Dunleavy. His face remained impassive, but in his eyes Montgomery could see a flicker of doubt. "They're moving him to a non-com cell. We need his information. The press will not find out. This is in America's best interests." 2300 hours, same day. The lights had gone out hours ago, but Saheim found he was unable to sleep. He had been detained in Guantanamo since he was 17, and never had anyone done what the dark-haired man had done. No one had ever left the interrogator's chair, let alone raised their voice. And he wondered what had changed. What would his supervisor think of it? He knew the interrogators each had a handler to keep an eye on them, like police dogs, he mused. And as dogs are punished when they disobey their masters, so surely would this strange man be punished for his actions. He settled down onto the hard mattress and let out a breath, staring up at the night sky through the window behind his head. Strange how the cells reserved for punishment have such a luxury. His eyes had barely closed when the light flicked on, and 2 guards stiffly ordered him out of bed, before handcuffing him and leading him down a seemingly endless maze of white corridors and staircases, into an area of Guantanamo that he hadn't realized existed. Sahaim realized he was being taken underground, and swallowed the bile rising in his throat at the errant thought that he might not come back up. He was led into a cold white room and made to lie on a grey stretcher. The only colour in the room came from his garish orange jumpsuit, too bright against the dullness of his surroundings. He fought to refrain from shaking as the guard strapped first his wrists and ankles, then his legs and arms, and finally his chest down to the stretcher, but gave an involuntary shudder as he saw the dark-haired man walk into the room, followed by 2 more guards. His eyes widened as he realised what they were carrying, but snapped back to the man as he began to talk. "Mr. Katsami, I hope you are well. It appears that you have been quite uncooperative so far with my men. However, I intend to change that." His voice chilled Sahaim far more than the low temperature of the room. The man stepped closer. "Let me explain to you how this works. This towel," he gestured to the cloth in the guard's hands, "is placed over your face, and water is poured over it so that it fills your nostrils and mouth." Sahaim felt nauseous as he realised what was about to happen. The man continued, "But this is only the beginning of the process, because then the water starts to push down, and you will start to gasp for air, and when you take that gasp, that's when it overrides your epiglottis, and water will flow down into your lungs, right about here," he pressed a finger to Sahaim's breastbone, "and that's when you start to panic, to struggle, and your body will start spasming violently, doing all it can to get rid of the water in your lungs. So I will ask you one last time. Who was your father trying to contact? Who are his associates? And where is bin Laden hiding?" Sahaim's heart was hammering against his chest, but he summoned up his best sneer and spat at the man's feet. "You can't do this. What would your supervisors say?" he snarled at the man. The man nodded to the guards, and they moved forward, strapping his head down and placing the towel over his face. He heard someone step closer to him. "I don't need one," the man whispered, and then it began. It wasn't a pretty sight, Montgomery thought, watching as the water was poured over the young man strapped to the table. Katsami Sr. had been a dangerous pain in the ass and was definitely better off dead. But it was a pity his son tried to be the same. After 10 minutes, they lifted the towel off and unstrapped his head, and Montgomery asked if he was ready to give his information yet. Katsami turned his head to the side and vomited, the sour fluid spattering on Montgomery's shoes. He stepped back, his stomach churning with the acid stench, and gestured for a guard to clean it up. "I'll take that as a no then," he said, and the towel went back. After half an hour, Katsami was sobbing in terror, his body jerking against the restraints, begging them to stop. It was clear that the young man's spirit had finally broken, and Montgomery nodded for the guards to release him and escort him out. He pulled out his phone and called Dunleavy. "We've got him," was all he said, before hanging up and walking out.